Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Happy evening, Mayank. Am I audible? Hi, Anil. Good to see you here. Am I audible now? Great. So, good evening, everyone. As this is my first session with ANC, let me introduce myself. I'm Deepak Bunde, co-founder and COO of an edutech company called Learnpedia. I'm an IIM Indore and Stanford Seed alumnus. I've been training students for verbal ability, group discussions, personal interviews for the last 10 years. Before Learnpedia, which is my startup today, I used to head the CAT course for Time Coaching Institute, which is a national level coaching institute. So while I cleared CAT in my first attempt way back in 2007, I kept writing CAT, Bank PO, SSC, CLAT, all these exams, GRE, GMAT, all these exams for the last few years to stay in touch with the exams so that I'll be able to guide students accurately and be able to give good actionable insights that will help them with their verbal ability preparation. So these series of verbal ability sessions that we are doing at ANC, they will be completely exam focused. They will not be traditional. They will not be bookish. All of these sessions that we conduct will be purely to help you clear your competitive exams. So we will learn a lot of these concepts, not like you used to learn in your school, but we'll learn a lot of these concepts by solving questions on the go. So we will keep learning as we keep solving these questions. Okay, I'm getting a few comments that volume is very low. Is it better now? Am I more audible now? Okay, volume is still very low is what I'm getting. Just hold on a second. Just hold on a second while I try to fix this issue. Just hold on a second while I'm trying to figure out if my voice can be beamed better. Okay, okay. Now you guys are saying that it is fine. It is better now. So let me start. Okay, our team is trying to ensure that we get better volume. All right, great. So for those of you who have just joined in, first of all, good evening. I'm Deepak Bunde from Learnpedia. I'm a verbal trainer. I've been doing this for the last 10 odd years. So I was telling your friends just a while ago that our sessions, our next few verbal sessions will be purely exam focused. We won't have pure theory sessions at all. We will have a lot of practice sessions through which we will keep learning. So in today's session, okay, someone is asking what is today's topic. So I'm just coming to that. In today's session, our aim is to understand the importance of verbal ability in competitive exams. It could be any competitive exam. What are the various subsections that you will find in verbal ability, and what are the different question types in each of these subsections. We will also run through a sample set of questions and learn how we can improve our overall competence in verbal ability. So that is the topic for today. An introduction to verbal ability is what we will do. We will try to see the different sections of verbal ability, see the different question types, and solve a few sample questions. After today's session, all the subsequent sessions after today will be focused on one particular subsection. Like we will have one track for grammar, one track for vocabulary, one track for reasoning, one track for reading comprehension. Alright then, let's get started. What is verbal ability? What is verbal ability? Verbal ability is okay. So what do verbal ability questions test you on? They try and help you understand or comprehend standard English. This is very important, what I just said. In verbal ability, they are trying to test whether you can understand and use properly standard English, not normal English, not the English that we are used to speaking every day. There is an English, there is a standard English, and there is an Indian way of saying things, right? So all of these exams will test you on the standard way of the language, whether you can use the language well, correctly, understand the language correctly. So what do you mean by standard English? Where did we get our English from? We got our English from the British. So broadly you can say there are two kinds of English. One is British, the other is US or American. So all these competitive exams will test you on the British English and not on the American English. What are a few differences between British English and American English? American English more often than not simplifies a lot of things. Like for example, in India we call check as CHEQUE. The same thing Americans call it check, the normal one, right? So this kind of questions where check is used as a bank instrument will not be tested in competitive exams. In all competitive exams, you will find this and not American way. So you will find yes, you will not find yeah, right? So yeah won't be there. You will find only yes. So this is what is our broad syllabus for all the verbal ability questions. So why are they testing? Why are all these competitive exams testing you in verbal ability? Why is it important? Well, it is very important because to have an effective discussion, whether it is in your conference room in the office or it is in the living room in your house, you need to have effective verbal skills. It could be English in office situation, it could be your regional language, it could be your mother tongue, Hindi or Telugu or whatever in your home. So because all these competitive exams are trying to test your employability in one way or the other, and because English is a globally recognized and understood language, they would like to know if you are up to the mark in terms of communicating. Today, I am sitting somewhere in Hyderabad and beaming this live session across the country. Similarly, tomorrow when you get into a job, you will be dealing with people across the world. You need to have a common base. You can't say I only understand Hindi to an American. you need to have a common base, and the biggest common base across the world is English, the standard English. That is why all the competitive exams, be it CAT or even GATE today, has English in it. That is the kind of importance that English has. So let me now get into what is the broad classification of verbal ability. What are the different kinds of questions that you can expect? What are the broad subsections you have? But before that, yes, someone, Rahul, says color and color, they are different in American English and British English. Good, that's correct. Let me ask you one simple question. How many alphabets do we have in English? Simple question. How many alphabets do we have in English? So I'm looking at your comments. I'm waiting for your comments to come in before I go forward. Go ahead. How many alphabets do we have in English? Okay. So I see a few of you are saying 26. Is there any other answer that you can come up with? Is 26 the answer? Great. So finally we have the correct answer. Diksha and then Pragati has now correctly said that there is 1, not 26. The English alphabet consists of 26 letters. So we confuse ourselves between letters and alphabet. The Hindi alphabet has so many letters. The Telugu alphabet has so many letters. The English alphabet has 26 letters. Right? So we are so used to this. This is such a common mistake. You can see it yourself in YouTube in the comments. So many of you have answered 26. So it is one of those common mistakes that so many of us make, that we start believing that maybe that is correct. If 100 out of 100 people are saying this is 20, that English alphabets are 26, then maybe English alphabets are 26. These are the common mistakes that these competitive exams pick up on. There are lots of such common errors that we do, which is tested in verbal ability. Right? So let's straight away get into what are the different broad classifications that we can think of in verbal ability. First, there is vocabulary. Vocabulary. What do you mean by vocabulary? What is vocabulary? Again, I'm waiting for some comments to flow in. There is always going to be a bit of lag between my speaking and the comments coming in because of the internet transmission. What is vocabulary? What do you mean by vocabulary? Vocabulary is the entire set of words that are there in a particular language. Vocabulary is the entire set of words that are there in a language. So, what is the vocabulary of English? How many words are there in English? What is the entire, if we can call it universal set, right? That is the mathematical language. What is the universal set of vocabulary, English vocabulary? Any idea? Is it hundreds, thousands, 10,000 or more? How many words are there in English overall? That is first question. Second follow-up question is, what is your vocabulary? I'm asking you, what is your subset in this universal set? So there is this entire set of English words, and then there are the words that you know. So how many words are there overall, and how many you think you know so far? And then let me ask you a third question. How many words will all these competitive exams require you to learn? So let me quickly give you answers for all of these. The universal set, the entire set of words will run into millions. Yes, a lot of you are saying that millions, that is, the last estimate was around 30 million, right? So a lot of these words keep coming from other languages. They become obsolete. Obsolete means that they are no longer used, right? So that is the overall number. What is your vocabulary in that? Right from the day you went to school till today, how many words did you learn? How many words do you think you learned so far? Hundreds? Thousands? And then all these competitive exams, how many words do they require? The kind of questions that they ask, what is a good number of words that you need to go start with? Let me quickly give you answers for that. Most of you guys in vocabulary would be in a few thousands, correct? Vijay is saying a few thousands, Ram is saying 4,000, Divya is saying 3,000. So yes, you probably know around, maybe around 10k. If you are a good reader, maybe around 50 to 20k. And what is required for all these competitive exams? Well, it depends on which competitive exam you are talking about. But broadly, they require you to learn around 30,000. So the gap between this and this is not very huge. It's not very huge at all. All you have to do is start reading. So I'll keep telling you to do this a lot for the next few days and the next few weeks. You have a problem with verbal? My first answer will be read. Read what? We'll get into that in a bit, and probably into next few classes as well. So that was vocabulary. Next, grammar. Grammar is not new to any of you guys. All of you have passed your 10th class. That means all of you encountered English grammar in the form of most probably in the form of a book called Wren and Martin. And that book is probably still there somewhere in your shelf. Quite dusty because you haven't used it in the last a lot of years. Right? So, grammar, or more importantly, usage of all these words is very important. Vocabulary is the basic thing, the words. Then we are coming to grammar, sentences. So, my suggestion 1 was read to improve your vocabulary. A suggestion 2 is to go pick up, dust the book in your closet called Wren and Martin and quickly breeze through all of these. Third, now this is new. Verbal reasoning is not something that you encountered. It's not something that you encountered in your school. Your school teacher never taught you about verbal reasoning because it's slightly more advanced when compared to vocabulary or grammar. These are basic. So you kept learning new words every day almost in vocabulary in your right from your schooling days, and grammar also you learned formally in school, but reasoning is new. So what is that? We'll come to that in a bit. The last one, reading comprehension. So first we're talking about vocabulary words, then we're talking about sentences, that is grammar, then we're talking about reasoning, which is mostly related to paragraphs, and combination of paragraphs, a passage, which is reading comprehension. So these are the broad classifications of subsections that you can expect in verbal ability. It could be any competitive exam that you're talking about, but when you're saying verbal ability, these are the broad subsections under which you'll find different question types. Now let's look at each of these subsections and see what are the different question types you can expect in each of these subsections. First, vocabulary. We already discussed that this is a stock or a set of words in a language. Some vocabulary questions. Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Alright, great. So I'm back online now. So we were discussing that some common vocabulary questions are synonyms and antonyms. Synonyms are words which have same meanings, and antonyms are words which are opposites of the words that are given. Then we have appropriate usage. Now in competitive exams you will find that they give you simple words and they'll ask you if
it is being correctly used or wrongly used in a particular sentence. That is appropriate use or inappropriate use. Now we'll come up with a sample question set for each of these question types as we go on. Next is idiomatic phrases. Now, what do you mean by idiom? What is an idiom? Idiom is a phrase which is not to be taken literally. What do you mean by that? It means that the phrase means something which the individual set of words and their meanings do not pertain to. For example, if someone says that it is raining cats and dogs, what does that mean? It is raining cats and dogs here. What does that mean? It means that it is raining very heavily. But if you took the literal meaning of the word, you would have assumed that cats and dogs are flying right out from the sky. That is not what it was actually meant. So, an idiom is a phrase which has a meaning different from what the literal meaning would have been. That is another question type. Then we have fill in the blanks. Now, different competitive exams will have either one fill in the blank or two blanks or three blanks in a question. Obviously, the more number of blanks in a question, the more difficult or trickier it will get. Next is cloze test. Cloze test is something that I would like to explain to you by showing an example because that will be simpler that way. Next, analogy. What do you mean by an analogy? Analogy is where you're trying to find out relationship between words. Again, let me just give you an example. An analogy, end of a question, would be something like this. So this is an example of an analogy question where he's asking you to identify the relationship between words in order to get your answer. So clearly the answer to this question will be cat is to animal just like crow is to something. So we all can understand that cat is an animal. Similarly, what is a crow? The answer would then be bird. So this is an analogy question where he is trying to ask you to identify a relationship between words and move on from there. So before we move on to the next set, which is grammar, I would like to reiterate what I just said about vocabulary. You guys are somewhere around 10 to 15,000 and what is required is probably around 25 to 30,000. The gap is not huge, and this 10 to 15,000 is not something that you built recently. By the way, all these 15,000 words were learnt in school every single day. Remember back in those school days, 3rd class, 4th class, 5th class, 6th class, in every year in your school, every single day you went to school, every day you went to the newspaper, you would have learned at least 5 to 10 words every day. We don't do that anymore, and that is why we are not learning new words after school. We'll have to get back into the habit of learning new words. You have to be inquisitive. You have to be curious. Okay, I don't know this word. Let me see what this word means. So, when you're reading tomorrow's newspaper and you don't understand a word or you don't know a word, first try to understand the context and try to guess the meaning of the word. But don't stop there. go back to the dictionary and check if what you thought or what you guessed was correct. If you do this seriously every day, then these words will remain with you forever. This is how you learnt new words in school, because they always had a context. You came across a new word and you learnt that in a sentence, in a paragraph, not standalone. So if someone asks you to just go through some 10 flashcards every day and you will be a vocabulary genius, that is not going to happen. At least that will not be permanent. What you need to do is learn 15, 20, 25, 30, whatever you can every day. But they should be in a context, so that the next time you come across that word, you will remember the previous instance where you came across that word, and therefore you will remember the meaning of that word. It's very, very important. Vocabulary is the building block. Only with words can you form sentences. With sentences can you form paragraphs, and with paragraphs eventually you will come up with passages. So if you can't do a good job of vocabulary, you will struggle in every subsequent stage. So my sincere advice to all of you guys is, please start learning new words every day. That is the most natural way of building your vocabulary. Another one obviously is odd man out. This is another question type where they'll give you a bunch of words. 4 or 5 of them will be related to each other. One of them will not be related, and that will be your answer. Then moving on next to grammar or English usage. This is again emphasizing standard usage of English language. So when we talk about grammar, you have parts of speech. How many are there? There are 8 parts of speech. I will not get into what they are. I'm sure all of you know nouns, pronouns, adverbs, adjectives, so on and so forth. You have to go back to Renan Martin. Just breeze through all the formulas so that you know for sure that these are the set of rules that will govern the English language. Just to remind you guys, grammar is the only part of English where if you know the set of rules, you will know the answer with 100% accuracy. Only grammar can offer you 100% accuracy in terms of correctness. With others, it will be like, yes, I am 95% sure, but with grammar, you can always be 100% sure if you know the rules. So, some common question types here. Identifying error in a sentence. This could be one question. Identifying an erroneous sentence out of the given set of sentences. That could be another one where 4 or 5 sentences will be given and you have to identify that sentence where there is some error. Replace the underlined part with the correct one. So he will replace the underlined part. There will be some mistake there, some grammatical error there. You have to replace that with the options given. Next, moving on to verbal reasoning. Like I was suggesting a little while ago, this is a new area. Vocab and grammar is something that you must be fairly acclimatized to by now, but verbal logic is something that requires a little bit of starting from the very basics. What is verbal reasoning or critical reasoning? It is the logical analysis of a given argument. Now, I know that you guys think of an argument as a heated debate or a discussion, but as far as critical reasoning or verbal reasoning is concerned, an argument is simply a claim which is backed by solid facts or reasons. An argument, as far as critical reasoning is concerned, is a claim that is backed by facts or reasons. These facts or reasons which are given to us are called premises. So this is a little a little difficult for you to get a hang of, or it's a little tricky in the beginning, because premises are not necessarily true outside of the test paper. So for example, I can tell you that one of the premises is that Virat Kohli is a left-handed batsman. Now you can't use your general knowledge there and say, no, I know for a fact that Virat Kohli is a right-handed batsman. If in the question it says that Virat Kohli is a left-handed batsman, that is a premise given, then that is the end of story. That means that he is a left-handed batsman as far as that question is concerned. So whatever facts or reasons are given, they are called premises. Then you have obviously an inference, and you have something called an assumption. Now from given set of facts or premises, if you can come to a statement which is not directly given, but you can say that this could be true, this is possible, that is an inference. Whereas if it is very far-fetched, or from the premises you can't say for a fact that something is true, then that becomes an assumption that you're making. Premises plus inferences plus assumptions together will give you a conclusion. Now remember that, like I said 1 minute ago or 2 minutes ago, that this can be a little tricky or confusing. We have an entire class dedicated to reasoning, or to basically let you understand these things in more clarity. So just run with me on this session, where we are only trying to understand what are the different question types. We're not trying to get into the basics. So the different question types you can expect as far as reasoning are PFQs. These are para-framing questions. That means a paragraph will be broken down into parts and it will be jumbled. You have to come up with the correct sequence of sentences there. That is para-framing questions. Para-framing. You have to properly frame the questions. Para-completion. Here everything except the entire paragraph will be given except the last line. He'll give you 4 options. He'll say, okay, you read this paragraph and tell me what is a good way to end this paragraph. So he'll ask you what is a good way to complete this paragraph. That is para-completion. Close test. Again, like I said, in vocabulary, so it's a mix of vocabulary and reasoning. It'll be better explained once I give you an example for that. Para summary. Here he'll give you the entire paragraph and he'll give you 4 options, of which you have to choose which is the best summary for the given paragraph. Strengthening or weakening arguments. So he already gives you an argument and he says which of the following, if true, will strengthen my original argument, or which of the following, if true, will weaken my original argument. So these are the broad question types. You will have a few more as well, like say FIJ. This is fact, inference, judgment. So you have to identify from the given set of sentences which of them are facts, which of them are inferences, and which of them are judgments. Then you have upstream and downstream arguments, wherein upstream, as the name suggests, if from the given sentence, if the given sentence itself can be deduced from the options, then that will be an upstream argument. On the other hand, if the option can be deduced from the given statement, that will be a downstream argument. Let me again repeat myself. These will be tricky unless I dedicate some good amount of time to each of these concepts. So it's okay if you're feeling that these are a bit too fuzzy at the moment. We will come to a point in time where we will discuss all of these things in detail in the coming few days. The last one now is the mothership. This is the combination of the other three sections. Though as a question type, this may be different. So as question types, you can say there is vocabulary, there is grammar, there is CR, and then there is RC. So as far as question types are concerned, broadly you can classify them into 4 parts. But if you are talking about the essence itself, RC is actually vocabulary plus grammar plus CR, because only with words can you form sentences, with sentences can you form paragraphs, and understanding paragraphs and understanding the overall message that is driven in that passage. See, for example, I am writing something down or I am speaking. I have a purpose. I am trying to pass on a message. So what is the message that the author of this passage trying to reach out with is something that you will try and understand in reading comprehension. That requires a good understanding of words. It requires understanding the different correct set of rules that the language should follow, and it obviously requires critical reasoning skills. You have to understand, because every small little detail will not be given there. There are things called explicitly stated and implicit. When you say something is explicitly stated, that means it is clearly given there. But in RC, they will require you to read between the lines. You will have to take messages which are not stated in words, but they are pointing towards the direction. So when you read a paragraph or 2 paragraphs, you know which direction the author is going towards. That is implicit. And reading comprehension requires all of these skills put together. That is why as a section that you have to learn, I would say RC, or let me put it another way. If an examiner wants to test how good you are with verbal ability, he will look at your RC, because if you did well in RC, that means you did well overall. Only if you are good with vocabulary and grammar and reasoning will you be doing a good job of reading comprehension. So what does this mean? Reading comprehension is a composite test. It covers the other 3 aspects. It involves interpreting sentences, paragraphs, and finding out answers to the questions that are based in the passages. Now, there are different kinds of questions within RC also. There are a lot of different kinds of question types within RC, but that would require a whole lot of more time than what we can allocate today. So, RC will be dealt with as a separate track in itself. So, we will, from next session onwards, we will have vocabulary classes, we'll have grammar classes, we'll have reasoning classes, and we'll have RC classes. So this broadly covers the different subsections and the different question types that you can expect in any of the competitive exams that you are dealing with today. Let's just run through a few questions to try and understand as we go how each of these questions work. First, we'll deal with a few vocabulary questions. First, here up is a fill in the blank question for you. Just go through it and try to think logically and try to get the answer. Just because it is vocabulary does not mean that there is no logic behind it. There is a logic behind it. Just run through it, think logically, and give me the answer. Alright, let's Let's go through this question and see how we can solve it logically. Companies that try to improve employees' performance by dash rewards encourage negative kinds of behavior instead of a dash a genuine interest in doing the work well. So let's break it down and see what he's saying here. Companies that try to improve employees' performance by dash rewards. So they're doing something to the rewards and that is encouraging negative kind of behavior. So we can deduce that the first blank should be negative because negative will only lead to negative. So this blank should be a negative word because it is leading to negative kind of behavior instead of dash. So obviously this should be positive. So let's look at the answer options here broadly. Is giving a negative word? No. If you're giving rewards, will there be any negative behavior in your employees? No. Similarly, conferring. Conferring is similar to giving. Conferring is giving someone something as a reward or as an award. So giving and conferring are positive. Positive. So this is not my answer. This is not my answer. Similarly, bestowing. Bestowing is giving someone a responsibility. So again, that's a positive word. So that is not my answer as well. So even without looking at the second half, without looking at the second blank itself, we got the answer. Let's see if D makes sense now. Companies that try to improve employees' performance by withholding rewards. So they're not giving the rewards to the employees. This will definitely encourage negative kind of behavior instead of fostering. Fostering means encouraging. Fostering is encouraging. So this is my answer for today. Simple. Let's move on. Here, like I was telling you in vocabulary earlier, this is a appropriate usage of a word. In this case, it is catch. So in the second, in the left hand side, he is giving you different definitions. In the right hand side, he is giving you different sentences where they are used. So you have to match which meaning of the word catch is used where. Try and answer this. Again, think logically. This is a competitive exam. So if you can find an answer quickly, you will be able to not just get this answer correct, but you'll be able to answer more questions overall and get a higher score. Alright, let's see. So in the interest of time, so what we have to try and always do is try to answer questions in the least possible time that you can. So when I look at the right hand side, I see that this last sentence is the smallest. Others are all running into two lines. This is only half a line. So let me start with that. Sorry, I couldn't catch you. Let me now go to the left hand side and see which one makes sense. Sorry, I couldn't catch you. Will this make sense? Yes. I didn't understand. I didn't grasp. So that means BH should be a pair. And luckily for me, that is the only place where B and H are together. So again, I need not run through the other options at all in the actual exam. But given that we are in a class today, let's run through the others also and see if this indeed is the answer, which obviously it will. Let's go one by one. All her friends agreed that Prasad was a good catch. A person worth trapping. So this makes sense. The proposal sounds very good, but where is the catch? Where is the deception? Deception is tricking. Hussein tries to catch the spirit of India in this painting. He is trying to capture the spirit of India in this painting. So my answer is D. Let's move on. inappropriate usage. So earlier we saw appropriate usage. Now let us see inappropriate usage of the word hand. Alright, so let's look at these sentences and see where the word hand is wrongly used. Let's look at the last one. When the roof of my house was blown away, he was willing to lend me a hand. Lending me a hand is supporting or helping. Support or help. So nothing wrong with this. This is correct. So that is not my answer. The situation is getting out of hand here. That means it is going beyond my control. Beyond control. Again, this is the correct usage, so that is not my answer. The minister visited the jail to see the breach at first hand. Breaching is when you try and get out of a secure place. In this case, breaching the jail means some prisoner probably tried to run away from the jail. At first hand. At first hand means doing it someone himself. So the minister himself visited the jail to see the breach. So again, it is the correct usage. The answer therefore is A. But why is A wrong? And what would have made A right? Can you answer that? So clearly A is the answer. But how will you modify that sentence to make it correct? So you will have to add an S there. I have my hands full. I cannot do it today. Means I am very busy. I am fully occupied. I can't do it today. I have my hand full. Doesn't make sense. There is another word called handful. That is different. But we're talking about hands full here. The answer is good. A lot of you guys are getting the answers. Divya, Arpita, Rahul. Yes, all of you guys. Good job. Next. Now this is what I mean when I say a closed passage. You see, the Z here is not a typo. This type of a question is called closed test or a closed passage. The difference between this question type and the fill in the blank is that in fill in the blank, let it be a one blank or two blanks, it is a single question. It is one sentence and a single question. Whereas this closed passage is actually a mini paragraph. It's a mini RC. So here you have to be more careful because you have to go through the entire 7-8 lines, try to understand the context, and then you will get the answer. For example, if I just went through the first 2 lines and looked at the answer options, I may think that something is the answer, but if I go through the entire paragraph, I'll realize that that cannot be the answer. So in a closed passage, it's important that you go through the entire paragraph, understand the message that is underlying, and then go looking at answer options. One other good thing about closed passage is that all these 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all these 6 are different questions. So in a fill in the blank, whether you have 2 blanks or 3 blanks, that's a single question. But here you have 6 questions that you can get correct if you read this properly. So just read this, try to understand the essence, and then start answering the 6 questions that are below. this is your very first English class. So if you don't know many of these words that are there in the answer options, it's perfectly fine. But you must always make one promise to yourself first, and not to me. It's more about you. So you have to make a promise to yourself that you will definitely be richer in terms of words today than you were yesterday, every single day. So a week from now you should be much better off than what you were today, and this should be a continuous process. That way you will soon come to a point where all the commonly used words will be fairly doable for you, will be fairly understandable for you, because you already went through them somewhere or the other in the last few days. And it's a continuous process. Once you stop it, you go back to square one. So let's now, okay, I see a few of you are answering 4, 5, etc. That is not how it is. Each of these are different. So that means that the first blank can be one of these 4. The second blank is one of these 4. The third blank is one of these 4, and so on. So let me just run through the entire paragraph once. Between the year 1946 and 1955, I did not file any income tax returns. With that dash statement, Ramesh embarked on an account. Embarking is starting. He started on an account of his encounter with the income tax department. So if I just read this line, I understood only this line, and I start looking at the first 4 options. Devious. Devious is cunning. Devious is cunning. Blunt is straightforward. Tactful is skillful. Pretentious is trying to be pompous, trying to show off. So if I just went through the first line and started looking at the answer options, I may think that any of these could be possible, but only when I read the entire paragraph will I understand that there is only one possibility. So let me further just go ahead. I originally owed 20,000 in unpaid taxes. With dash and dash, the 20,000 became 60,000. The income tax department then went into action, and I learned firsthand how much power the tax department wields. Royalties and trust funds can be dash, automobiles may be dash and auctioned off. Nothing belongs to the dash until the case is settled. So when you go through the entire paragraph and understand the context in which Ramesh is, the state of mind that Ramesh is, you will know that he is not being a show-off and definitely not being cunning. So is he being skillful here? No, he is talking about how he lost a lot more because he thought that he could get away, but obviously he didn't. So it's not being skillful here. Blunt is the first answer. He was just being blunt, he is saying that okay, this is how it went on. Now with dash and dash, with interest, does this make sense? Yes, because he was supposed to pay something, he didn't. So there will be an interest that will come on. Taxes is already there. He already mentioned unpaid taxes of 20,000. So you can't say taxes again. Principal, which in this case is taxes, is again not accurate because it's a redundancy. Both taxes and principal are redundancies here. He already gave taxes, so it can't be this or this. Returns, no, you don't call this as returns. Returns is a profit that you get out of a investment. So that's not returns, so that is interest. And so interest was one. What is the other one? He paid fines. Fees will be the regular fees, but this is beyond fees. So not fees. Refund again is not the right place here. Sanctions. Sanctions are not necessarily money related. Sanctions are given between countries. So US, for example, sanctioned. They put sanctions against a country's oil reserves. That means that they put a ban. So sanction is a ban, so that doesn't make sense here. So it is fines. So interest and fines. So with interest and fines, 20,000 became 60,000. Royalties and trust funds can be dash. Can they be closed? What will they get? What will the income tax department get if they're closing? So that doesn't make sense. Detach again means remove from. That doesn't make sense. Attach or impound. Attaching royalties and trust funds means that this, in order to pay this 60,000, whatever personal savings I had, whatever personal funds I had, they were also attached. Now you see that is what they're trying to do with Vijay Mallya or Nirav Modi. They're trying to attach their personal properties in order to pay off, right? So impounded is also pretty close actually. Impounded is pretty close, but impounded you use only with physical objects. It is physical objects. When you are seizing something, then you can call it impounded. So it could have been this or this, but because we're talking about fund, which is not physical in nature, it is attached. Automobiles may be smashed. Again, smash doesn't make sense. Seize. This makes sense. Dismantle. Why will someone break? Or why will someone freeze? They don't make sense. Frozen would have probably made sense in funds, but here it doesn't make sense. Seizing. So one thing you can also learn now is that seizing and impounding are synonyms. Last one. Nothing belongs to the dash until the case is settled. Is Ramesh a purchaser here? No. Is he a victim? Definitely not, because he did something that was illegal. Is he an investor? No. What is he? He's an offender because he did something illegal. Let's move on to the next question now. Homophones. Homophones. Homo is same, uniform. Homo is uniform. Phone is sound. So words which sound similar to each other are homophones. So in these three examples, he is given two possible options which are homophones and is asking which of them makes sense in that particular sentence. Go through them. Alright, so let's look at the first sentence. The critics censored the new movie because of its social unacceptability. So a new movie which was released was socially unacceptable according to the critics. So they did either censoring or censuring. Which of these two things makes sense? Let's understand what each of these words mean first of all. What is censorship? Censorship is trying to excuse me. Alright, censorship is trying to keep something under control. It is something that an official person can do. Right? So in India, for example, we have a censorship board which will officially, if it finds any faults with a movie, it will try and cut out the parts that it finds inappropriate. That is censoring. But can critics do that? Critics are any movie reviewers. They can't really go ahead and censor a movie. What they can do is censure. C-E-N-S-U-R-E. That is showing that you do not approve of it. So the answer in this case is censured and not censored. Critics cannot censor because they don't have the official status to do that. Next, one suspects that the compliment was backhanded. What do you mean by a backhanded compliment? A backhanded compliment is something which seems like a compliment. So first of all, let me discuss what compliment is. Compliment is when someone is appreciating you for a job well done. Whereas complimenting something is adding a thing to make the set complete. So if you complement these classes with your regular preparation, that will help you crack the exam. So complementing, when you add E here instead of I, that means you are combining two things together to make something better overall. So that is clearly not what the context is here. A backhanded compliment means something which seems like a compliment, but it's actually an insult. So it is a very I would say not a very open kind of criticism, but something which is very sharp, something which only a few people may understand, but once they understand, they know that it's not really a compliment, it is actually a backhanded compliment. It seems like a compliment, but they're actually throwing an insult at us. The last one, after brushing against a stationary truck, there should be a comma here. After brushing against a stationary truck, my car turned turtle. Car turning turtle is car flipped, basically. So, which stationary is it? This A stationary would mean that it is in a state of rest, which is what the current context is. So, this is the answer. Whereas this stationary is a shop where you go for office supplies or your school supplies. So that was homophones. Next, look at a few simple questions, straightforward questions. These are synonyms. The first one is proscribe. Alright, so let's look at what this word means. In our separate section of vocabulary classes, we will go through something called the RPS method of learning words, where R is root, P is prefix, and S is suffix. So here in this, so we'll go in depth about RPS later, but in this case the root is scrib. Scrib. So root basically is the core word, the base of the particular word. Prefix is something added before it, and suffix is something added after. So here scrib is script, to write. So, you know, from this you have something called script. That in itself is a word. Scripture is a word. Prescription is another word. So all these words have the same base, same root, right? So here in this case the prefix is pro. What this word means is you are writing a name before. You're writing. So there are names A, B, C, D. So proscribe means you're writing before a person's name that he is outlawed or banished. So this is an ancient term. It was used mostly in it was prevalent in the 15th or 16th century, where when you say that someone has been proscribed, that means he has been banned or outlawed or banished. He has been kicked away from the society. So today proscribe means an order which prohibits something. So order in itself is alright, but this is more correct. So in English you will find that there could be a couple of options which are close, but one will always be closer than the other. So in this case, both B and C are similar because this is an order, this is a specific kind of order, and this is the answer. An order which prohibits sale and publication of something. Proscribe. Then we have antonym. So here the root is SEQ. SEQ is to follow. SEQ is to follow. So obsequious is a person who tends to follow people who he thinks will help him out. So someone who's just following people, who is being very nice to people because he gets some work out of them. It's a negative word. If you're being obsequious, you're also being servile and fawning. So these three are actually synonyms. If you're being servile to someone, or if you're fawning over someone, or if you're being obsequious to someone, what you're doing is you're basically trying to be in their good books because you expect some work out of them, some help that they can offer you. It's a negative word. But we're looking for an antonym and not a synonym. The antonym is supercilious, which is bossy behavior. When someone is trying to be very bossy, very arrogant, you say he is being or she is being supercilious. So this is my answer. On one hand, obsequious is you just follow and say yes to everything that that person says. On the other hand, you're being very bossy or arrogant. Improper is neither on the positive side nor on the negative side. This is not really it's neither a synonym to the given word nor is it an antonym to the given word. Next, an idiomatic phrase. So we came across an earlier example of raining cats and dogs. Now let's look at this example. Don't let Amit make a monkey of you. What could this mean? So one thing we know from idioms is that you can't take it literally. So it's not jumping up and down. That is definitely not what he is intending to say. Making faces at you. If he's making faces at you, then he's being a monkey and not you. So this is also not what we think this could be. Make you spend your money. Now this is very specific to money, but making a monkey out of someone is broadly making a fool out of someone. It could be one of the possibilities of making a monkey of someone is making that person spend money, but this is more generic in nature, whereas this is very specific. So answer would be D. But assume for a while that D is not there. There are only A, B and C. In that case, you may well go for C because that is the closest you can get. It's definitely not A, definitely not B. Between C and D, D is much better because it is generic in nature. Next, best replacement. So one word that is given in a different color there, that needs to be replaced with one of the given options. Which one could it be? Or is it correct in itself? In which case the answer will be D, that is no improvement. It is good the way it is presently given. He offered me water, but I denied it. When will you say that you denied something? When you're trying to, denying something is not admitting to something. He's saying something and you're saying that no, that didn't happen. Then you deny it. But in this case, when someone offers you water, you politely say, I don't want water. That is declining it. You didn't deny it, you declined it. At the same time, neglected doesn't make sense. Refuted is a synonym to deny. Refute is again challenge. When someone says something and you don't agree to that, you refute that argument. But that is not the current situation here. Someone offered you water, trying to help you out, so you politely say, I don't want water. That is, you decline it. Now we're coming to grammar. Replace the underlined phrase. Okay, so let's just run through this. Like I told you earlier, grammar is probably the only place where you will have 100% correct or 100% accurate answers. There will be only one correct answer, the other three will be definitely wrong for one or the other reason. So let's look at the reasons why other options are wrong. The MP rose up to say that in her opinion, she thought that the Women's Reservation Bill should be passed on unanimously. First of all, what is unanimous? Unanimous is without any opposition. Without opposition. That means every one of them, if there are 100 people in that house, all 100 of them should unanimously agree to this bill. That is what she wanted to say. But what is wrong with what is given there? There are a couple of mistakes there. There is one mistake of redundancy. You either say, in my opinion, this is the case, or you say, I think this is the case. So having both opinion and thinking is redundant. You either have opinion or you have thought. One of them is fine, but both of them together makes it wrong. Second, passing on. When will you say passing on? When you pass something across generations. You inherit something from your ancestors that is being passed on to you. But here what she meant was just passed, not passed on. So that means that for having the word on, D is wrong. In her opinion, she thought, C is wrong. Passed on, this is wrong. Rose to say or rose up to say. Both of them are alright. She thinks that the Women's Reservation Bill should be passed. So this is the correct answer. Next. Identify the statement that conforms to standard English language. Now, this word conforms, this is a homonym for confirms. Right? There are two different words. You know what conforming means, right? You know what confirmation is. Conforming, on the other hand, means following a rule. So you have to follow the rules of the standard English language. Alright, so which of these four statements is correct on all accounts? The other three have some or the other error. That's the only way in which you can find out which is the correct one, by eliminating the wrong options. Alright, so let's start eliminating now. Let's start with the last option. The running of large businesses consist. So businesses consist. Okay, grammar is alright there. Large businesses consist of getting somebody to make something else that somebody else will sell. Make something else, somebody else. This first something should not have else. Right? So this is wrong. C. The running of a large business consists of getting somebody to sell something that somebody else made for more than it costs. There should be an S. It costs so much. No, it cost so much. So that's not the answer. The running of a large business consists of getting somebody to make something that somebody else will sell to somebody else for more than it costs. This seems alright. Let's look at A. The running of large businesses consists of getting somebody to make something that somebody else sold. This is wrong. The entire sentence is in present tense. You can't suddenly move to past tense. So this is wrong. The answer is B. Alright, let's move on then. It's a simple one. Identify if there is an error. Otherwise, say the answer is D. Alright, the blinds deserve our sympathy. What do blinds mean? Blinds mean curtains. Curtains in your house. They don't deserve our sympathy. What he's talking about is blind. The blind people. He's referring to the blind people as the blind. They deserve our sympathy. So the answer is A. Next. Now we are moving on to verbal logic, critical reasoning. First of which is PFQ's paraframing question. So this means that a paragraph has been broken down and jumbled. Now put it back in the correct sequence. Alright, so let's see how we can go across these kind of questions. Like I said, you will have a separate class for paraframing questions. So don't worry if you're not getting or if you're finding these questions a little tricky in the beginning. Only with practice will you start getting a hang of how to solve these kind of questions. And there are certain set methods in which you have to attempt these questions. So we'll discuss all of that in a separate class. In today's class, we're trying to see the different kinds of questions. So this is one of them. Just treat it like that. Don't get bogged down by whether you're getting the answer correct or not at this point in time. Alright, so let's see how do we go about these sentences. How do we know which is the correct one, or how do we start? Let's look at the first sentence. The likelihood of an accident is determined by how carefully the motorist drives and how carefully the pedestrian crosses the street. When he's being so specific and saying the motorist and the pedestrian, that means he would have already introduced earlier that there is a motorist and a pedestrian in this situation. So A cannot be the starting point. That means I will eliminate the first two options. B is there, right? So B says an accident involving a motorist and a pedestrian is such a case. So basically that means that after B, only after B can you have A. So if you look at option C and option D, in both the cases B is there first and A is there afterwards. In one situation C is in the middle, in the other situation B and A are together and C is towards the end. So now let's look at, so one thing we also came to understand now is D is the starting point. So let's see what D is saying. The simplest strategic problem arises when two individuals interact with each other and each must decide what to do without knowing what the other is doing. Isn't this a theory? And giving an example of this theory is exactly what B is doing. So DB, again, it's not helping us answer this question because both of them have DB, but in a situation where you had DB and DA, this would have been a good way of identifying that, okay, you have a theory in D and example of the theory, because you're saying it is one such case. That means this is an example. B is an example of what is stated in D. Now what is C saying? Each must decide how much care to exercise without knowing how careful the other is. Would you think that this statement should come in the middle of A and B, or do you think that this statement should come towards the end after B and A? Let's run through these three sentences together to get the answer. Each must, so you know for sure that B is the first of these three. An accident involving a motorist and a pedestrian is such a case. Each must decide how much care to exercise without knowing how careful the other is. The likelihood of accident is determined by how carefully the motorist drives and how carefully the pedestrian crosses the street. So if you look at C and A together, you realize that he's first giving the theory of how to go about this in C, and then he's explaining it with respect to the example given in this case of motorist and pedestrian in A. So that means that you first have C and then illustration of that is A. So the answer is C, DB, C and A. So like I said, these can be quite tricky in the beginning. With enough practice, you will get a hang of it. Let's move on to the next. This is a general or a generic CR question, critical reasoning question. He is asking you to identify an inference. So go through this passage from here to here and infer. What do you mean by infer? Something that is not explicitly mentioned in that paragraph, but something that you can fairly be certain of. Given all of these facts, you can be fairly certain about A or B, or maybe both A and B, or maybe neither of them. Alright, so let's run through the passage quickly. The dominant belief is the strong opinion today is that the soundest foundation of peace would be universal prosperity. One may look in vain. In vain is, what do you mean by in vain? Doing something unsuccessfully. Doing something unsuccessfully is doing something in vain. So one may look unsuccessfully for evidence that the rich have been more peaceful than the poor, but then it can be argued that they have never felt secure against the poor, that their aggressiveness stemmed from fear, and that the situation would be quite different if everybody were rich. So what can you infer from this? Can you infer that a lot of aggression in the world stems from the desire of haves to defend themselves against the have-nots? So here when he says haves and have-nots, haves is rich and have-nots is poor. So can you say that this can be inferred from the passage? Yes, they say here that they never felt secure against the poor. So this is, yes, correct. Second, universal prosperity as a foolproof measure can no longer be accepted. Is this inferable from the passage? No, in fact they are saying that the soundest foundation will be universal prosperity. So B is going against what is given in the passage. So this is clearly wrong. So it's neither this nor this. The answer is A. Let's move on to the next. Para summary. So go through the passage and then the answer options and see which of them contains the essence without missing out on any of the information. Two things. It has to be as crisp as possible, the summary, but it should also have the entire message. It should not lose out on any of the message that was given in the passage itself. Alright, so again, probably if you remember what I said in the beginning of the class, vocabulary plays a very crucial role in the entire verbal ability. So though this may be a CR question, If you don't understand half the words that are given in that paragraph, you wouldn't be in a situation to answer this question, right? So that is how important, that is how fundamental vocabulary is. So let's just uh, run through a few words whose meanings may be helpful in understanding this paragraph. What could they be? Compounded is something that is multiplied or magnified. Having no recourse. Recourse is having a some kind of a counteraction. Manifestation is taking the form of, taking a particular form. Exacerbate is something that is worsening the situation, something that's going from bad to worse. Alright, so if you go through the paragraph, let me just run through it very quickly. Local communities have often come in conflict with agents trying to exploit resources at a faster pace for an expanding commercial industry economy. More often than not, such agents of resource intensification are given preferential treatment. So these guys are given preferential treatment by the state through the grant of generous long leases over stocks, for example, or provision of raw material at subsidized price. Subsidized is reduced price. With the injustice magnified so much, local communities at the receiving end, they have no other option but to resist both the state and so they have no other option left but to resist this entire thing that is happening. So they think that it's unjustified what is happening to them. So now what they're doing is they're resisting both the state which is giving that offer and the exploiters who are exploiting them through a various varieties of protest techniques. These struggles might perhaps be seen as a form of a new kind of class conflict. So when he's talking about class conflict, he is talking about how one class of a society, which is in this case bottom of the pyramid, how one class of the society is fighting against those who are above them. Alright, so let's look at the answer options. A new kind of class conflict arises from preferential treatments given to agents of resource intensification by the state, which the local community sees as unfair. Does this sound like a good summary to you? It is not talking about, it's not at all talking about how there is protests, right? So that part is missed out here. So while it is very crisp, it has a little bit of information missing. Next, the grant of long leases to agents of resource intensification for expanding commercial industrial economy leads to direct protest from the local community, which sees it as unfair. So good. So here direct protest bit is mentioned, but the fact that it is happening, it's turning into a class conflict is missing here. So that means this is also not complete. C. Preferential treatment given by the state to agents of resource intensification for expanding economy worsens injustice to local communities and leads to direct protests from them, resulting in new type of class conflict. So this is complete because it's talking about how there will be protests. It's also talking about how there will be class conflicts because of this. So far this seems like the better of the three options. The last one, local communities have no option but to protest against agents of resource intensification and create a new type of class conflict where they are given raw material at subsidized prices. So this is some new information that is not given anywhere in the passage itself. So this is beyond the scope of the current passage. So the answer, a good summary of the given passage is C. Let's move on to the next. Para completion. So go through the entire paragraph and tell us which of these 5 options will be a good way to end the paragraph. Alright, seems like I'm getting a few answers for this. Sudha, you're funny. You're giving me options 3 or 5. No, that's not how it works. Give me one of these. 3 or 5. Which is it? Let's see. Relations between factory and the dealer are distant. What do you mean by relation is distant? That means they're not very closely bound anymore. There is some problem with the two of them. They're not very close and usually strained. As a factory tries to force cars on the dealers to smooth out production, relations between dealer and customer are also strained because dealers continuously adjust prices. They make deals to adjust demand with supply while maximizing profits. This becomes a system marked by a lack of where we a lack of long-term commitment on either side, which maximizes feelings of mistrust. So the first relation between the dealer and the distributor is not good, the factory and the dealer. The second relation between the dealer and the customer is also not good, right? So there is no long-term commitment from any of the sides, any of the three sides mentioned here. So there is mistrust across the board. In order to maximize their bargaining positions, everyone holds back information. The dealer about the product, the consumer about his true desires. So as a result, what has happened? Which of these 5 options could be possible? As a result, deal making becomes rampant without concern for customer satisfaction. Deal making is something that's already given there, right? So that they ensure that these guys are just interested in making deals. The dealers, that's already given. So why would you want to conclude with it again? It's a redundancy. Second, as a result, inefficiencies creep into the supply chain. Supply chain by definition would mean the entire chain right from the beginning. You're talking about cars, automobile industry here. So supply chain would include the tire manufacturer, the nuts and bolts people, the paint guys, everyone. So can you say that inefficiencies will happen all over there because of the relationship that is not good between these 3 people? No, that's too much of a stretch. You can't say very confidently that the entire supply chain will be going bad because of the relation being bad between these 3 guys. So that's not the answer. As a result, everyone treats the others as an adversary rather than as an ally. Ally is a friend, but adversary is a very strong word to use. Adversary is an enemy. Just because you're looking after your own welfare doesn't mean if I'm a car dealer, I won't say that my customer is my enemy. At the same time, I won't say that my factory is my enemy. That's too strong a word to use. That's not the answer. As a result, fundamental innovations are becoming scarce. Scarce is less frequent in the automobile industry. Again, this is too much of a stretch to say that just because these 3 people are not going well with each other, innovations are not happening at all. That's too much of a stretch. So then the answer is automatically 5. But let's see what it says. As a result, everyone loses in the long run. So this seems to make sense. The relation is not good between A and B. It's not good between B and C. So in the long run, no one is actually getting out feeling good about themselves. So everyone loses in the long run is the correct answer. And the last question for today. Fact, inference, or a judgment? Go through the definitions of what fact, inference, and judgments are, and then tell me whether the first sentence is fact or a judgment or an inference, and similarly the other 3 sentences. So just to help you guys out, fact is something that can never be false. You can't say that there is a possibility that this is wrong, right? So that is a fact. Inference is something that you're fairly certain about, because he'll give you some supporting reason for that. So still you're not 100% sure like a fact, but you are say 80% sure based on the information that is given. Judgment, on the other hand, is something that is purely personal. You can't say that this is wrong because it is his judgment or her judgment. He is not giving any reasons for us to say that this is correct or this is wrong. So judgment is something which is a question mark. You can't say that this is correct or this is wrong. Fact is 100% undeniable. Inference is something where you can say, yeah, this seems possible. This could be possible because he gave a reason for it. Alright, we're getting a few answers, so let's jump in. The first sentence says, we should not be hopelessly addicted to erroneous beliefs that corruption in India is caused by the crookedness of Indians. Is he giving me any reason for why we should not be hopelessly addicted? No, he's saying we should not be. That word should itself tells me that it is a judgment. It's neither a fact nor is it an inference. So in the answer options, one of the options says it could be an inference. That is wrong. It's not D. Let's look at the second one. The truth is that we have more red tape. We take 89 days to start a small business. Australians take 2. So this clearly is a fact. We can't say that, okay, this may be correct. This is correct because he's giving an established fact. We have 89 days versus Australia's 2 days. So we have more red tape. This is definitely a fact. That means it's not C. Answer is not even C. It has to be A, B or E. Let's look at the next one. Red tape leads to corruption and distorts a people's character. Distorting is ruin. Twisting something out of its original shape is distort. If I have to get into a vocabulary class, I would say tort is the root here. Tort is a twist. But let's not get into vocabulary now. And here, if we get into grammar, a people, does it make sense? In this case, it does. So when I told you in the beginning that you have to be careful about grammar and you have to understand all the rules of grammar, you also have to understand the exceptions to rules. So generally you will say people, you won't say a people. But in this case, it's an exception because here you're talking about a particular type of people, which is Indians. So a people, when you're talking about a collective set of people called Indians, you're calling them a kind of people. So a people's character is fine in this case. But coming back to the question itself, is this a fact or a judgment or an inference? Red tape leads to this and this. Why? He never says. So it is a judgment on his part. So we rule out option A as well. Now we're left with B and D. Every red tape procedure is a point of contact with an official, and such contacts have the potential to become opportunities for money to change hands. Is he saying this will happen? No, he's saying there is a potential for this to happen. So it is an inference. He's saying it may happen. It's not a judgment. He's not saying it should happen like this. So it's an inference. The answer is E. So with this we come to an end to today's session, wherein we saw the different subsections broadly, which are vocabulary, we had grammar, we had CR or reasoning, and then we had, of course, RC. We saw question types of these three. We are yet to look at RC. We'll start that pretty soon. One thing that I would like to leave you guys with before I leave you, I have one advice for you guys. Because you're getting into this kind of a mode where we are getting into a series of classes, I would expect one thing from you guys. From today onwards, please read a lot. When I say a lot could mean 10 pages to someone of anything. It could be a newspaper, a book, a novel, whatever. It could be 10 pages for someone. Someone is already reading 20 pages. Please read 30. Please read 40 or 50. Ensure that in every subsequent class that you attend of ANC, you are better than your previous self in terms of your command on vocabulary, your command on grammar, and therefore automatically your command on RC will become better or easier. With practice, your CR skills will also improve. But I would suggest that pick up that Brennan Martin book and go through the grammar rules once again quickly. And vocabulary, there is no shortcut for this. You have to try and read thoroughly and ensure that you pick up a few words every day and add that to your vocabulary. Alright, so I hope you guys found this session useful. We will have a lot more sessions in the future wherein we'll focus on vocabulary in a few, grammar a few, reasoning a few, and RC a few. That will happen probably from next week onwards. Till then, I would request you to keep reading to improve your vocabulary, your reasoning, and improve your grammar by going through Brennan Martin as well. Alright, thank you for being a good, patient, and very attentive audience. Have a good night, all of you. Thank you.